You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Excited to be chatting with you today on our Friday review. And this Friday, I've been looking to this one for quite some time. And the reason is that during the month of February, I gave myself a challenge. And I also gave you a challenge. So just about 4 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago now, since we're into the first week of March, I challenged you to choose one book only. And if you didn't take my challenge in February, then let's bring it over to March. But what I wanted you to do is this. Simply put, I wanted you to read 10 pages per day of a book of your choice where you would gain knowledge from it. That was my goal for you, is to say, okay, most people, they might read one book a year. That's it. Like if they're lucky. And that's the truth. So here's what I want you to do. If you read 10 pages per day, you are going to be able to read one book per month because that's about 300 pages. So what I want you to do is focus then on what does it take to read 10 pages per day. It takes about 10 minutes 3 times per day. And if you're a slow reader, that's about 3 pages every 10 minutes. You can do that. You can do 10 minutes before you leave for work or when you first wake up, 10 minutes during lunch, and 10 minutes before bed. That allows you to read 10 pages per day, about 3 pages per sitting every 10 minutes. Again, even if you're a slow reader, and then you'll finish one book a month. If you do that, and even if you picked one topic, you will be light years ahead of a lot of people in your field. So for example, let's say your field was personal training. If you read 12 books on different facets of training, man, you'd be so far ahead, especially if you kept that knowledge going by then doing smaller research online, those types of things after you're going deep with the book. Or if it was nutrition, and you're just going on anti-inflammatory, and then you read a book on paleo, then you read a book on veganism, then you read a book on et cetera, right? Or let's say that you're just trying to figure out thyroid. You want to become the expert on thyroid. Well, here's what you would do. You would literally read all the books. All the top books on hypothyroidism or maybe Graves' disease or Hashimoto's, whatever it might be. And then that's going to lead you down a rabbit hole to heavy metals and gut dysfunction and SIBO and candida. And you're like, oh, it's not just my thyroid. Sure, there might be a genetic component to that, but really the reason why my thyroid's malfunctioning is because some type of food sensitivity or leaky gut or et cetera, right? So you'll become the expert in that. Now, again, my field is health, right? It's health, it's fitness, it's anti-aging, it's weight loss. But yours might be, let's just say, I have some friends that sell insurance. And so for them, they might be studying for all their different certifications in selling insurance. Or maybe it's relationships and dating. I actually have 2 friends of mine who, for the longest time weren't really interested in getting into a relationship. They preferred being single and dating and all of those things. And now for them, it's like, okay, they want to switch gears. They're now getting older and they want to look into having a family and all of that. But that's totally not part of their mindset. It's not who they are. It's never really what they've been thinking about for the last 30 plus years of their life. So what they have to do now is really get into maybe a different philosophy, a different psychology, and so they can read books on relationships and what it might be to find the perfect person for you and all of those different things, right? So it really depends on where you're at in your life and what your topic is going to be. But I'm telling you right now, it's so amazing that after 1 year, you can look back and like, whoa, I read all of those books. And if you think about it, let's just say you're 32 years old right now. You may have only read a book a year since you've been out of college, or maybe not at all. Because again, a lot of people read 0 books and that's okay. But you can change that this year. And over the next year, maybe do a little extra. You could potentially read more books this year than you have ever before in your life just by reading 1 book per month. And I'm not talking about school books. It's fine to have read up on calculus and algebra and psychology and physics and all those things. They're all great. They're great, right? But you didn't really need to apply them to your life specifically unless that was specific to your career or whatever you're into. So now, though, you get to choose. It's so enlightening. When you get to say, hey, I'm in control of this now. I choose the book. A lot of times people hate to read, but they've been forced to read certain books. So when you get to choose, everything changes. So in just a moment, I'm going to do my February review of all the books that I read as just a little synopsis, and then I'll put them all up on today's show notes. So really, for all the notes today and every book that I read with a link to every book, simply go to StephenCabral.com/763. StephenCabral.com/763. And as always, for the previous 762 podcasts, just go to StephenCabral.com/podcasts. You can even search the podcast for topics, anything that you're looking for. So before I get to the book review, here is our March challenge. I put it out there to the entire community, and I put that out there to myself as well, and I will be doing this. I am going for a plastic bag-free month in March. Plastic-free bag month. So what am I doing? Well, here's the deal. What I'm doing is carrying this little foldable bag with me inside of my backpack or my laptop bag or wherever I'm at. Literally, it's this tiny thing that fits in your palm of your hand. Now, there are so many of them out there, but they're usually made of nylon or they're made of polyester, so they can fold up really, really small. This one, again, I have no relationship with the company, but you get a 3-pack. They're machine washable. They're reusable. They come in cool patterns and colors. It's called Holy Luck. That's the name of the bag. It's a recyclable grocery bag, but really you can use it for carrying anything. But it's about the size of like a plastic bag, okay? It might be called Holly Luck, but I think it's Holy Luck. It's HOLYLUCK. I'm going to link it up today on the show notes. But again, you could use any company in the world that you like. I'm just linking to this one. So why did I choose this one? Well, a lot of them are great, but this one holds up to 42 pounds in one bag. I don't even think most plastic bags would hold up like that at all. And then when you're done with it, you just roll it back up. Has a little keychain hook on it. You can actually just keep it right on your keychain. So I love these types of things. We have to be using less plastic. We really do. Even in our clinic, we have plastic bags, of course, to give to people because people take home supplements and they take home lab tests and whatever it might be. But those are 100% recyclable. So we kind of like we have to pick and choose. We have to do our best. This is one more way to do this. And if you check back on over the house calls, so I believe I can't actually name the house call. But if you go back to, yes, I have it right here. So if you go to StephenCabral.com/758, on last weekend's house call, so on the house calls, I talk about a lot of different things like that people bring up in the community. Reusable Ziploc bags, what can you use? Well, there's silicone bags now that literally almost last a lifetime, and a lot are guaranteed for a lifetime, at least 3 years though, at least. And not a lifetime, but at least 3 years. And they can be put in the freezer, they can be washed out, they can be reused. So it's another way to use less plastic. I'm telling you right now, when you look at the sea and you look at how many plastic bags are in there and how a lot of times these animals, or we'll call them sea creatures, I guess, let's just say like a sea turtle swims, it looks like a jellyfish, he goes to eat it, it's technically just a clear plastic bag and that's now inside of his system. So these are things that we all have to be aware about. So my challenge in February, feel free to bring it right over to March. So the whole goal is to give you the challenge during the month. But my goal is don't make it just stop after the month, right? So we have March. You should be reading a new book. And now you're using your recyclable grocery bags or just carrying around with you as best you can. My wife and I keep one in our car. So if we're ever just popping by, whether it's like a CVS or it's a Whole Foods or whatever, like we have it right there. Like we just have everything right there. And the same thing, I have one in my bag. So then you'll be able to bring it in the future because all you're doing is trying to create a habit. And I think that's one of the amazing things is that we create change over time. We don't create change tomorrow or overnight, but over time. That's what it's all about. And then feel free to share it. Again, this is all about paying it forward, passing it along. You know, am I the one to come up with any of this? No. I'm the one to hopefully be able to bring it to more and more people and allow them to see the benefits. And so that's what I want to share with you now. Now it's the moment I've been waiting for, which is to bring you my February challenge of reading one book a day. In February, how many books do I typically read in a month? I read about 12 to 16 books per month. And again, if you've ever want to figure out or learn the podcast, just type it in speed reading. I believe that's the term to look for. I'll try to link it up in today's show notes as well. But if you go to StephenCabral.com/podcast and you type in speed reading, it should be there, or speed read, always easier to shorten them. I did a podcast on how I learned to read quickly while being able to retain the information. And again, I was the person who read 3 to 4 minutes per page, super slow, and then over time taught myself how to read faster, but of course, retain the information, which is what it's all about, right? There's no point in reading fast if you don't retain the information. So for me, it's, again, I talked about it on that show. I can't learn by auditory, by hearing it. I can't learn by just watching video. Well, I can, but it's better for me to see words on a page for whatever reason, that's how I learn best. I can see it as an image, and I can actually pull back up that image in my mind as I'm like sifting through it in my mind to get that information again, which is why I'm a reader. But if you're someone who learns better by hearing it, well, then audiobooks will work great for you as well. So here's the deal, though. Gave myself a challenge, and I said, okay, in January, you didn't get to your minimum of 3 to 4 books per week. So because of that, and I don't care how busy you are, this is me talking to myself. This is the pep talk I gave myself. I don't care how busy you think you are. You made a commitment to yourself to read at least 150 books per year. So that's at least 3 books per week. Okay, and I wasn't getting there. I was somewhere around like the 7 to 8 book mark. It's about 2 books per week, which is fine. Again, nothing wrong with that. But I was letting it slide. I was letting it slide because I was busy with traveling and basically speaking and trying to get this whole book thing together and all those different things I have going on. But really, at the end of the day, they were excuses that were getting in the way of me always staying true to my commitment, which is learning more, growing, so that I can then pass that on to others and use it in my practice as well. So I stepped it up and I said, okay, I'm going to change things. I'm going to make myself, and again, I still travel. I traveled twice in February for work, actually once for pleasure, once for work. And again, super busy month as well. But what I did was I set aside the time and I made myself do it. And I would try to catch back up at night if I needed to, whatever it might be, because that's the challenge I had in front of myself. So how did I do? Well, believe it or not, I did not reach the 28 books in 28 days. So I hit 25 books in 28 days. I was a little disappointed, but not hugely disappointed. And here's why. And this is a really good lesson, I think. So many people all could focus on negative. Well, you didn't reach your goal. You fell 3 books short. You did 25 books in 28 days. So a lot of people would be like, okay, my goal, let's say, was to lose 15 pounds this month and I only lost 12 pounds. Well, you can look back and say, how much weight do you usually lose in a typical month? It might be like, maybe it was like 2 pounds or 0 pounds before. So you shot for 15, but you lost 12. Like, that is amazing, right? It's amazing. Don't focus on the negative, focus on the positive. Look how much you did. Look how much you accomplished. There's a great saying, right? It says, aim for the moon, and even if you miss, you'll fall amongst the stars. It's not actually true, because the moon is probably a little closer than the stars, right? But at the same time, it's a great analogy because it's the truth. Like, you did great, right? You were shooting for the moon, you fell amongst the stars. Like, that's great to shoot for as well. So for me, what do I usually reach? Well, somewhere about 12 to 15 books, 12 to 16 books per month. So no matter what, I added about 10 more books to potentially 12 more books in that month. And if I look back to my January, I read 3 times as many in February. So I was very happy with it. And if I hadn't set this goal, I can tell you for sure, I would not have gotten more than 12 books. That's for sure. So I did double that. I did 25 books, fell 3 short, but really happy with it. And that's the same thing that I just gave you for the plastic bag challenge, right? Okay, well, maybe, like you buy a bunch of things and you forgot your plastic bag. Well, that's okay. Did you do it 20 out of 30 days? Amazing, because before you did it 0 out of 30 days. So now you reached it 20 out of 30 days. You reached it 66% of the time, right? So that's how I look at it. I'm very happy with it. And I loved so many of the books that I read. And I read a couple updated books, which I hadn't got a chance to read. Where did all these books come from? A lot of them were based on research I was doing for podcasts that month. And then much of it was recommendations from colleagues and other people like, hey, have you read this book? Have you read this book? And I'm like, oh, no, I haven't checked it out. Is it worth reading? They're like, oh, yeah, check it out. So that's how I read a lot of the books. And the other thing, too, is like, if it's out right now and it's popular, I'm going to read it no matter what. Like, even if I'm not going to get a lot out of it, I want to know what you're reading. So that's a big thing for me is I need to know what's mainstream. And so for that, that's simple, right? I just go on Amazon. I go on the New York Times bestseller and I say, oh, people are reading all of these books. I should read that too. I need to know what they're reading. And then what I need to do is show because most of these things are very dogmatic, right? It's like, I'll be doing I read the book many months ago, but the plant paradox and lectins, right? Very dogmatic. It's like, don't eat them because they're going to destroy your system. I know that's being very dramatic, and I apologize to Dr. Country about saying that. But the truth is that it's not an all for one, right? It's not an all for one. Should everybody be doing a high fat diet? No. Should everybody be doing a high carb diet? No. But you talk about that in a book usually like it's everybody should be doing this, and that's just not the truth. So what I get to do is I get to read the book and I say, okay, this book's absolutely right, but for this population, or if you're at this stage in your life right now, and this book isn't good for these particular people. So that's what I consider my job, because I just try to be as unbiased as possible and just give you the truth. And that's honestly, if I can do that and I can feel I'm doing it, then I'm doing what I just consider my job, my mission. So what I want to do is I want to go give you a quick rundown of the books, just maybe like 30 seconds on each book. And then maybe if it sounds like, oh, that's a great book and I should read it, or I'm interested in that topic, then I'm going to link them all up in the show notes today. So just go to stevencabral.com/763. All right. So I read a bunch of books on the brain, right? A bunch of books on the brain, and 2 of them were deep dives. If I ever call it, a deep redive, meaning like, okay, I might have read a book 5 years ago and I can remember the information from it, but I want to go back and really dissect this book again, the intricacies, all of those things. Every once in a while, I'll go back and I'll fully reread a book. It's rare, but if I'm doing research-based work, then I will do a reread instead of flipping through the book where I'm like, oh, okay, like it's reactivating all the files in my brain as I'm flipping through that book, which is why I keep a library. I keep a library of research, meaning like I have shelves of Ayurvedic books, shelves of traditional Chinese medicine, shelves of my old school naturopathy and biochemistry. So a lot of people haven't read before about biochemical-based balances with body, which I'll talk about that in the future, but I won't get into that now. Okay, so let's get right into it right now. All right, so what were some of those books? The Alzheimer's Solution. So I did a 3-part series, episode 728, episode 732, episode 746. I'll put those in today's show notes. I did a really, like, if you know anybody in your family has Alzheimer's, if you have Alzheimer's, if you're worried about getting Alzheimer's, listen to those 3 shows. It's 3 shows. It's a deep dive on how to prevent Alzheimer's, or if you have it, how to stop it and potentially reverse it as well. The research is out there. I brought it to you in 3 separate shows. Check it out. Okay, so I read The Alzheimer's Solution, which I thought was a very good overall book. But the real book, if you have to pick one book, right? Because you're probably not going to read maybe 4 or 5 books on Alzheimer's. But if you pick one, I would read The End of Alzheimer's. All right. So that was a book I talked quite a bit about. I thought it was more mainstream. I thought it was very approachable. I didn't think it was too practitioner-based. And so very, very excellent. The End of Alzheimer's, great book. I will link that up. The next one was Why My Brain Isn't Working. So I did an overview of this book about, like I said, 4 years ago or so. But I wanted to do a big deep dive. This is a big book. It's 500 pages, and the level of information on amino acids, different minerals, and everything, how your brain actually functions and works. And if you're missing any of these things, how that affects your brain. Because a lot of people think like, oh, my body will all figure it out. I'll just get it from food. It doesn't really matter if I'm missing zinc or selenium or tyrosine from my food or tryptophan. Well, it does. So nothing matters on a day-to-day basis. But over time, if you're missing any of these things, it leads to huge, huge issues in terms of inflammation, neural synapses inside of the brain, everything. So this is a great book. I would say it's a little bit more practitioner-based, especially those looking at doing anti-aging and Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ADD, ADHD, executive functioning, all of those things, disorders. Great one to check out and well worth it, but a big, big deep dive, like I said, on that. All right. So the next one, I actually brought this up on the podcast just a couple weeks ago. One of my recommendations for practitioners, Biochemical Imbalances in Disease. Love this book. It wasn't too long. Really enjoyed it, showing as well as how nutritional deficiencies, again, what if you're missing B6? Well, if you're missing B6, guess what? You can't really take carbohydrates, convert them to usable base energy. You're not able to convert tryptophan to 5-hydroxytryptophan and then eventually to serotonin. You're not able to properly function with the nervous system. So it shows that nutritional deficiencies, along with your genetics, is what allows you to overcome disease or what causes disease-based states and overall poor health. So great practitioner read. Maybe not for your everyday person looking to pick up a book. Yeah, it is a textbook, but a great book. Anyone studying functional medicine, check that out. Or even nutritional biochemistry or nutrition in general. If you're a health coach, I think it's very approachable for a health coach to read that as well. Okay, so a bunch of different books I read. So what I find is that I obviously love reading about health, of course. That will never get old to me. But I am someone that equally loves reading about psychology. And, maybe you can hear it a little bit in my work. Maybe you can hear about it hear it specifically on my Mindset and Motivation Mondays. But really, psychology is something that I study deeply. And that's because I am literally a completely different human than I was when I was, let's say, all the way up until about 23, 24 years old, which is where I made the real switch to a different mindset. And I did that consciously. I had to literally rewire my brain, the way I was thinking. I had to stop with a judgment-based mentality. Everything's good or bad. I'm better than, I'm worse than, all of those different things. I had to look at all of these things in my life as not happening to me, but either happening for me or a way that I can learn and that I'm actually responsible and in control of my life. And then I had to talk about consistency patterns and rhythms and cognitive behavioral therapy and all of these great things. And And I'm a huge believer in it. And the reason is that a lot of times the plans that I set up for people, they've tried pieces of this before, but they've never been able to put it all together. So what I try to do is, from a psychological based standpoint, is understand where the person is at that I'm speaking with. And then I try to match that with where they're at, but just one more step ahead. That's it. Not 10 steps more, but one more step ahead. So anyway, I love psychology. Jordan Peterson, Dr. Peterson, clinical psychologist. I think his teaching is brilliant. I'm a fan of Carl Jung. And if you haven't read Carl Jung's work before, I think it's amazing. I think Jordan Peterson is now a contemporary of what I would say is Carl Jung. I think he's one of the most brilliant minds out there. You don't have to agree with every point that he talks about because he can be very controversial on certain topics. But anyway, he's worth listening to. I mean, his videos are all over YouTube. Again, he is a lightning rod of a person. But what I like to do is never just kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? If he says something that I don't necessarily agree with, well, it doesn't mean it invalidates all of his points, or maybe it's something that I need to look at myself. So anyway, I always just say keep an open mind. He wrote a book called The 12 Rules of Life. It is a deep philosophical and psychological look at life. If you want to get deep into how the mind works, how cultural norms work, pretty amazing book. So pretty intense, really great, worth checking out. Okay, Reinventing Yourself. Amazing book, fun book, very short. It's essentially 100 ways to motivate yourself. There are like 2 to 3 mini chapters, 2 to 3 page mini chapters. You can even read just 1 page a day, like upon waking, 1 page a day. I should say not 1 page a day. One short 2 to 3 page chapter a day. And that would be a way to get through this book and also motivate yourself for the day. So the other thing, I want to just move on to the next book. The other book that I read was called The Inflammation Syndrome. This was actually recommended to me by a particular wellness client. And they said, is this a good general information book that I should read about to figure out about inflammation? So I'm like, oh, let me check out the book. Short book, maybe a couple hundred pages long. And again, for me, I read a couple hundred pages in about an hour. So about 200 pages in probably an hour. So The Inflammation Syndrome, a great starter book on inflammation. It really is a starter book, meaning and there's nothing wrong with that. We need starter books. That makes complete sense, right? So, and that's what I consider every episode of the Cabral concept. It gets you started. That's the place to learn about. Today, we're learning about different concepts, different things, and then you can move forward with those things. So Inflammation Syndrome, a great starter book if you don't know much about inflammation, how it's caused in the body, and the repercussions of it. Okay. Dirty Genes is the next book. This is a mainstream book. So why did I read Dirty Genes? And the reason I read this is because it's one of those newer, more popular books on genetics and how they affect you in your daily life. So I enjoyed it. Again, it was an introductory, more of a mainstream. It's a very approachable read on genetics. This is not a crazy deep dive into deep methylation, cytochrome P450, SOD, all different types of single nucleotide polymorphism-based mutations, okay? But it's a great book on just genes in general and how to look at it. The problem is this, is that a lot of times we give people information on all this genetic abnormalities and they start to worry about it. For the most part, there's no reason to worry about your genetics if you're feeling good right now and you're living an overall healthy lifestyle. What happens is it's 95% of all genes are altered by our diet and our lifestyle. So what we have to do is, in the long term, really work on diet and lifestyle. But in the short term, absolutely, we could work on specific gene-based formulas, we'll say, by using things like activated B vitamins, like 5-MTHF, methylfolate, of course, nature folate is another name for it, methylcobalamin, the different methyl forms of B vitamins that help with MTHFR, doing things like the Dr. Cabral detox for COMT-based issues, ramping up sulfur-based amino acids, all of those things. And they're all great. But again, you don't even have to know what any of this stuff means if you're just, you're doing a detox seasonally, you're doing your multi on a daily basis, getting your minerals and your antioxidants. So just keep in mind, you don't want to get overwhelmed either. That's not why I'm sharing this information with you. All right, so the next 2 books by the same author called Sustainable Medicine and Chronic Fatigue and Myalgic Encephalomyelitis. So I'm like, chronic fatigue and myalgic encephalomyelitis. Well, that's exactly what I had. Let me read a book on that. I don't think I've ever seen a book written on it before. So I read it and it was excellent. Excellent book. I couldn't believe that someone wrote a book on chronic fatigue syndrome or immune-based dysfunction, as well as myalgic encephalomyelitis. So a fan. It was a great book. It really was. What's the one thing that I didn't like about it? And I know that the author will most likely come around on this as well. She promotes a keto-based diet. It's an issue. It's an issue in the long term, and it's an issue, and I know she said it worked great for herself, but the problem is she self-admittedly is more of an endomorphic body type. And I've told you before, if you're an endomorphic body type, the keto-based diet's going to work better for you. So here's the deal, though. Again, never in the long run. 75% in the long run, you have to think about cell membrane sensitivity. And if you're putting all those heavy fats in there we're talking about saturated fats versus polyunsaturated fats. I'll talk about that in the future, and how they can make the cell membrane actually what's called a little bit more dysaerobic, less oxygen in, less oxygen out, where too many polyunsaturated fats, which would be like your vegetable oils, your fish oils, those types of things, again, fine, but just not overboard, right? Not 20 grams a day. So anyway, that's the only drawback. That's it. Because if you're a Vata body type with chronic fatigue syndrome, like keto diet would be destructive. But if you're an endomorph, absolutely in the beginning, helpful. Enjoyed the book, enjoyed her overall philosophy. I don't use the pharmaceuticals, so she recommended quite a few pharmaceutical drugs in her book as well. I, of course, have no need or use or want for pharmaceuticals, but I'm also not against her using them either. So again, I don't know. I really just do believe in an integrated practice, meaning if you want to use and you feel best using pharmaceuticals for a period of 3 months or 6 months with the thought in the long term of coming off of them, fine. But I just know that a lot of pharmaceuticals either stop your own body's production or actually inflict damage on another part of the body. So I'm just more a fan of natural-based medicine, but great book, happy with the read, actually really enjoyed it, much more than I thought I would, because I had never seen a book written on it before. Okay, what's up next? Well, I read a few books because I wanted to give you some feedback on oral hygiene. So I read Holistic Dental Care, and I did a podcast on that. It is episode 739. 739 was basically an outline of this book and the 5-minute routine that I do every morning for my own oral-based healthcare. So check that out, episode 739 of the Cabral Concept. And then Whole Body Dentistry. Now, this is a book I read 10 years ago. Honestly, it was 10 years ago. Great book. It gave me my first real learning education on biological dentistry and all these issues going on with the silver or the metal amalgams in our mouth that actually have mercury in them, and root canals and all the issues that those cause. So they did an updated version, an updated book on this, and I didn't even know that they did an updated version. So it's twice as long as the first one. Really great information. So I read that. Next book is called Eat That Frog. That was a really fun book, really short and super, super short. Read that book a bunch of years ago. They added a few new chapters. And honestly, I think I did an episode 52. 752 is Ways to Beat Procrastination. That was 2 weeks ago, 2 Mondays ago. Time flies. So that's a great book. I really like that. Eat That Frog. What does it come down to? It comes down to writing out all of your tasks for the day. They're going to move you forward in life. Not the ones that are the typical rhythm and routine, but what's the new one where you're going after a new goal? Do that one first. Eat that frog first thing in the morning when you wake up. Get it out of the way. Do the one that you don't want to do, and then it's done for the day. Okay, so the next book is called Super Life. A friend of mine, buddy of mine from Boston, really great guy. He said, hey, have you ever heard of the book Super Life? And I haven't. Let me check it out. So that's what people do. They mention a book and they say, oh, it talks about this and this and this. And I was like, oh, that sounds like I'd be something interested in. So I ordered it. It's a very short book, maybe 150, 200 pages. Again, quick read. So overall, I liked it. I liked the premise. I like the plant-based, talk, all those different things. It's kind of like watching a documentary. It's the truth, right? The truth, but it's only on one side. And so that's what I didn't love. And the other thing too is then the author talks about how you really want to get all of your food from whole food, all your nutrition from whole food. Totally agree. But then he talks about how the soil is depleted and then you probably can't get all your nutrition from there. So then you probably need to use nutritional supplements. And then he's like, yeah, but you should only really use these nutritional supplements. I'm just not into that. That's the truth. Oh, these nutritional supplements are okay. It's kind of like doctors, like MDs now. They're like, okay, vitamin D is okay. Fish oil is okay. This one might be okay, but not that one, that. And so whenever they come up with a pharmaceutical patented version, it's okay now, of course, because it's patented and it's sold by pharmaceutical agencies, but the rest aren't. And then the next year, that one comes out and okay, that one's okay too. So I just don't love that. I mean, just not into it. Overall, a good read. I enjoyed the book. I really did. But in my opinion, it was too biased in one direction. But again, the bias was good overall. Eat more plants, eat more plant-based nutrition, fruits and vegetables and some nuts and seeds. Love that. But just thought the nutritional supplement viewpoint was just off base, especially since he's saying you don't really need nutritional supplements and then his company sells nutritional supplements, which again, I think it's great if an author sells their own nutritional supplements because they probably, put a lot of time and effort into overseeing it and formulating it. But it just, the contradiction there didn't make sense to me. All right, more psychology. So we've got a bunch of books. This is going a little bit more in depth. Hopefully it's helpful to you. If it is helpful, let me know. Again, go to Instagram and then just go to @Stephen Cabral. Let me know if this book review was helpful. Obviously, it's a big one. It's not going to happen often. This is the one time I'm doing this to give you the big book review. And then on Friday reviews, I typically go over maybe like 1 to 2 books. All right, but I'll go a little bit quicker. The Drama of the Gifted Child. This was an interesting book because, again, this was recommended to me. I don't even know how this was recommended to me. And it doesn't actually have anything to do with being gifted in terms of like intelligence or getting good grades. But really, it's a deeply powerful book on how many of us, we suppress our true self, our true needs and feelings due to our upbringing and the expectations placed on us. Meaning like you get kind of pigeonholed as to being this type of child or that type of daughter or son or whatever it might be. And so if you're ever feeling like empty or alienated or you're not living your purpose or anything like that, super short book, probably worth a read. It's a good book. It really is. I enjoyed it. Really, really short. And it gives me, I read a lot of books like this. And the reason is I'm trying to be a good dad for my 2 daughters. And I'm not always living up to the expectations maybe I have for myself. But I just want to look back and really have no regrets and just say like, hey, I did my best. I understood they were kids. I wasn't losing my temper. I gave them the time and the love and all of those things that they needed. And then I can look back and I can be happy. You know what? That's just what I'm trying to do. The next book is called Social Animal. This is one of the best books on social psychology that I've ever read and that's ever been written. Yes, it was written like 30 years ago, but again, it doesn't go out of style. You can read Freud to this day, Carl Jung to this day, Ayurvedic philosophy to this day, and it's on point. You know, it's great. So it's very intense, this book. It's a deeply provocative look into why people act the way that they do. This is a deep book. This is not like easy reading, but well worth it if you're into psychology and how people act and why they act the way they do. And actually, Jordan Peterson is one of the first people to turn me on to this book. But reading that is really great. Next book, this was recommended by a friend of mine who's into podcasting on entrepreneurship. He recommended a book called Hyper Performance. And so a relatively quick read. I enjoyed it. It just wasn't the right book for me. It honestly wasn't. And the reason is that it would have been right for me if I was still on my path to figuring out what I should be doing in life. But, you know, for the first time, I would say 2-3 years ago, I'm there. Like do I have a lot more work to do? Of course. But I'm arrived at exactly what I should be doing. I'm teaching. I consider myself doctor. Back in the day used to mean teacher. That's always what I've considered myself in life. If I'm teaching people, I'm in my zone. Like that's honestly the bottom line. If I'm not teaching, that I'm not enjoying myself. I'm not. I have to be teaching for me to feel like I'm enjoying my work. So of course, when I'm on Skype video, talking with a new wellness client, I'm teaching. I'm teaching them about their health. I'm teaching about labs, whatever it might be. This podcast, I'm teaching. I have a retreat coming up this May, our first live in-person retreat. I'll be teaching at it. I'm going to be creating certifications in the future to train other doctors, health practitioners, personal trainers, etc., in essentially how I practice. And again, I'll be teaching. So all of these things are within my happy zone, right? And so I'm already there. When I took the quiz, like, are you a hyper performer? This, and this. I was like, everything was a yes. And so I'm like, this book really isn't for me. But an overall great book. It is a great book, and it will definitely get you motivated. So pretty cool if you're a health coach, you're just starting out, that, or again, I say health coach, but you could be in finance, you could be in accounting, you could be in whatever. That's just it's outside of my realm. So I don't talk about that. All right. Nutrient Power. This goes back to one of those brain-based books. So I'm a fan of this book. It's a relatively quick read rather than why isn't my brain working? You know, that's a little bit longer read. This is like 200 pages versus 500 pages. And this actually talks about, again, a lot of the nutrients and the more deficiencies than anything else that lead to autism, ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, etc. But of course, as we know, autism and other brain neurological based issues also have to deal with the gut too. So that's important to look into. So, and actually, they talk about this in the book. They actually talk about, well, it doesn't go deep enough. That was my drawback with this book. Yeah, it's a short book. Can't talk about everything, but it doesn't say why they get depleted. So it doesn't talk about SIBO and candida, leaky gut, intestinal permeability, food sensitivities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So another book, No More Allergies, Asthma, or Sinus Infections. Wanted to check this out. Just saw this book. It came up in my feed on Amazon. They know that I like to read. What was it? Well, honestly, it was a giant promotion for xylitol. If you want to know more about xylitol, which is naturally occurring, by the way, and how it actually does help with prevent cavities and can be good as a nasal spray. But honestly, the book is just about xylitol and really promoting the xylitol-based products, which again, I have no issue with. No issues with that. It just wasn't the book for me. All right, only a couple more books. The 9 Steps to Keep the Doctor Away. This was a great overview on healthy living overall. And if you're new to eating well, if you're new to adding more water into your diet or decreasing stress and why that might be good for you. So if you're like a beginner, or you're looking to get a gift for someone, like that might be a pretty good book. All right. PMS, Solving the Puzzle. I do a lot of work with females and female hormones. This was a super short read. This was actually a full reread of this book. I read this book, I think 8 years ago. I can never remember if it's 6, 7, 8 years ago, but I read this book before I had even opened my first practice. So that would have been 7 years ago or so for first functional medicine practice. Okay. So overall, really good book, super concise, really short. And it even talks about how hormone imbalance can be caused by stress, heavy metals, gut function. Enjoy the book. Good overall book. Beyond Training, Mastering Endurance, Health, and Life. This was a bug killer, like a big, thick book written by a friend, colleague, overall good guy, Ben Greenfield. And this book really is like, it's the essential Bible for athletes, for biohackers looking to optimize their performance. It's well over 500 pages of research, tools, tips, recommendations for recovery, training performance, and just like if you're really into human optimization, this is it. It gives you all sorts of gadgets and recovery devices. And it was a fun book to read, and it was intense. So I enjoyed reading that one. Biochemical Individuality. This was my third reread of the month. So this was a book I did read about 9 years ago, and it was a full reread of the book. It was an older one by Dr. Roger Williams. These are some of the doctors I'm going to teach you about in the future. Dr. Emmanuel Ravici, Dr. George Watson, Dr. Roger Williams, Dr. Joanna Budwig, all of these people that nobody's ever heard about before. These were doctors, early 1900s or so, that set the stage for true naturopathy, functional medicine, biochemistry. Like these were the doctors to study. They don't even really exist anymore. And the reason is that you will lose your license. You will honestly lose your medical license if you were to publish findings like these. You would be pushed out. That's the truth. So Biochemical Individuality, great book, not mainstream book. Really enjoyed it, reading it again. Total Immersion. So last two books, just real quick. I'm getting back into sprint triathlon training again this summer. And sprint triathlons are not these long triathlons. They typically take under 90 minutes to complete. Swimming, it's biking, it's running. And it's a great way just to like challenge your mind, get into a new program, do some cross training. So for me now, I get to swim, I get to lift weights, I get to do biking, and I get to do a little running. So it's just a great way to cross train. It really is. Just keeps my mind fresh. I don't never get bored. So about 6 years ago, I hired a coach when I started to get into some of these sprint triathlons. Haven't done one in like 4 years. And I was just saying, hey, I need my swimming is my weakest leg, and I need to feel comfortable with 200 guys in the water bumping up against me and putting my head under the water, like all these different types of things. That's a story for another day. And then, so I need to get better at my swim. Okay. So how do I improve my technique? So I hired a coach, and they were a total immersion coach. Well, now I want to refresh. So I just bought the book, Total Immersion. It's like the technique. It's the best way to learn swimming at its best. So I know how to swim. What I want to do is improve my technique. That's what it's all about. It's about optimizing yourself. Total Immersion, that's the name of that. And then I read one book on martial arts. So I love martial arts, something that maybe I'll talk about a little bit more in the future. But it's a personal interest of mine, a hobby of mine, and I love it for the art of martial arts. I love the art form, the way the body moves, the functional anatomy, that how it moves in space. So that was it. That was 25 books in 28 days. And again, this month I'll be back to my normal, which is 12 to 16 books. That's manageable for me. That's doable. And I love it. Honestly, I love it because now all of those authors, remember their best stuff. These authors write their best stuff in these books. I get to absorb their best stuff. Maybe it took them 10 years to learn all that. I get to read that in a couple hours, and now it's mine. I mean, it's amazing. I'm telling you right now, reading books or even listening to them, if that works for you, that is the way to enhance your knowledge and then, of course, pay that forward to someone else. So that was it. If I had to pick two best books of the month, the ones that I keep going back to, it would probably be like The End of Alzheimer's book, and it would be Beyond Training, Mastering Endurance, Health, and Life. That was the deep dive on that, on just training, recovery in general. There was just so many things, like so many different things to look at and like how far you can take things. So that was pretty mind-opening. Enjoyed them both. And so that was that. All right, let me go through. I know there's a lot. Let me go through my super nutrient of the week, which is vitamin A, and I will wish you a good weekend. All right, so vitamin A. Why is vitamin A so important? Well, hardly anyone talks about it. What's vitamin A? It gets overlooked. Well, vitamin A, a lot of us know that it's good for what? It's good for our skin. It's good for our eyes. We know that how important it is for that. But a lot of people don't know that it's also really, really important for reproduction. So reproductive function. It's good for our overall organ function and extremely important for the immune system. So yes, it helps with vision, but really, really important for overall tissue growth, bone growth, immune growth. Like it is one of those things that's just vital. So when I talked about viruses on Tuesday's podcast, episode 760, how to destroy viruses, herpes, shingles, cold sores, all that. Vitamin A, a lot of practitioners will do 50,000 IUs for a week or so. I don't, but you can, and that's just to bump up that immune system. So really, really important. There's a couple different forms that you can get of vitamin A to help boost that immune system. One is called retinoids, and retinoids they come from basically liver and eggs and milk and raw dairy, those types of things, okay? So that allows you for, yes, its role in healthy vision and bone growth, the immune system, all of those things. And then there's another form called carotenoids. And carotenoids come from more of vegetable base, so vegetables and fruit. And again, same thing. We're looking at carotenoids, looking at an antioxidant-based function as well for the skin, the eyes, the immune system. Okay, what's the difference between basically retinoids and carotenoids? Retinoids are readily available. They're ready to be used right away for vitamin A. Carotenoids are going to have to be converted in the body to usable vitamin A, which is called retinol. Okay, so essentially they're just, the plant base is being then converted to a usable form. So again, if you're vegan, it's not an issue, but if you don't eat any meat, you don't eat any eggs, and you don't eat organ-based meats, you really do want to focus on things like all of your orange, right? Your orange and dark greens. So sweet potatoes, carrots, apricots, mangoes. We're looking at orange things, right? Orange, not necessarily oranges themselves, but the sweet potatoes, the carrots, the mangoes, the apricots, high in vitamin A. Other things that are high in vitamin A would be spinach, cooked spinach, would be cantaloupe, another orange, would be sweet red peppers, okay, red peppers, orange peppers, again, orange, black-eyed peas, and broccoli. Those are all high in vitamin A. And then for animal-based, what are we looking at? Beef liver, so of course liver is going to be high in vitamin A. B vitamins, essentially liver is high in everything. We're looking at kale, spinach, romaine lettuce, broccoli, winter squash, another great reddish orange one, tuna. And so those are some great, great versions of that. One other thing that I wanted just to bring to your attention is that one of the major issues with birth defects as well is a lack of vitamin A. So it's very, very interesting. But one of the companies that I support and that I choose as one of the charities that I like to give to, some of the proceeds from Equilibrium Nutrition go directly to Vitamin Angels. And I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but we privately just donate what we feel is very, very important. So for 2 years running, the World Health Organization has said that the number one need, believe it or not, is a simple multivitamin for women in developing countries that get vitamin A and other vitamins as well, but vitamin A and course folate are two of those things that help prevent birth defects. So it's a really great foundation as well. Check out Vitamin Angels, and vitamin A is one of those big things. So again, it helps with fighting inflammation, it helps with the immune system, it helps with reproduction, it helps with vision, night vision especially. If you start to see those things go, really, really important. Now, just keep in mind that it can build up. You can get too much vitamin A if you are supplementing. So, you just want to be, it's fat soluble, so it's like a K, a D, and vitamin A and vitamin E. So you just want to be a little careful that you're not overdoing vitamin A supplementation. And I'll talk about vitamin A supplementation in just one moment. But what I would say is this, is that you can get it mainly from food, without a doubt. That's very, very important. But if you are overdoing it in supplements, you'll start to feel potentially dizzy, nauseous, get headaches, skin irritation, pain in the joints, bones, and even liver damage, because vitamin A actually gets stored in the liver and it then is being able to be called on. Now, this is not going to happen very often. And the reason is that in multivitamins, what you're going to do is you're going to look for retinol. So you're going to look for the active form there, as well as beta carotene. So if you use something like our daily activated multivitamin or our daily nutritional support shake, you'll see that there's 5,000 IUs, international units of vitamin A, which is exactly 100% of the RDA. So we give you exactly the amount of vitamin A that you should be getting per day at minimum. So we always give you the at minimum at least. And then we allow you to get all the other food base through your natural food, and your body can do with it as it wishes. So I'm a big believer in getting 5,000 IUs per day of vitamin A. Of course, that's an adult dosage. Children, you'll use that essentially at 150 body weight in body pounds. And so if they weigh 75 pounds, they'll get somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 IUs per day. So the benefits are there. It's one of the reasons why I always say is that never overlook nutritional supplements even if you don't have one of these major things like vision-based issues or cancer or something, very, very viruses that I talked about, something like overt, you might even just have something like brittle hair, brittle nails, dry skin, overall like slow growth of the hair, skin, and nails, poor immunity. That's oftentimes a signal for low vitamin A. So do keep that in mind. Hopefully today's show was helpful. Of course, next Friday, I'll be doing another deep dive on our super nutrient of the week. Today's Friday review was the longest I ever did, but I do hope it was helpful. This show is really about you, your needs, what I'm looking to bring you. If it was too long, let me know. Go to CabralSupportGroup.com. That's also our free private Facebook group that you can comment as well. Or if you'd like the deeper dive today, I'm happy to do one of these in the future as well. But typically they're right around the 25 minute mark, so they can bring you one show per day and it's easy to digest. Thank you so much, as always, for your support of the Cabral concept. If possible, if this show is helpful, please do feel free to pass it on to someone you believe it could help. Take care. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stevencabral.com/courses.